living in some uncharted times, obviously, and we're all still changing, I think, to this new normal. And I do think this is a new normal. I think that's one of the key things about what we continue to spend time thinking about is even when we're past the crisis of this pandemic, we've instituted a time, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, where the digitization of our world is only going to increase and continue, and the chance of going back to a world where we undo a lot of these behavioral changes is highly unlikely. And so, what I think a lot about the world, and specifically around the ad ecosystem and the dollars being spent, is how much we've sped up a couple key changes. One is going to be around buying models. Two is going to be around who's buying. And then three, there's going to be a certain level, I think, expectation change based on actually those first two things. And so, over the next 6 months, let's call it the rest of this year, plus or minus, I think what's going to be interesting to see is how are dollars spent, especially around things like back to school and the holiday. In a normal year where kids are going back to school, that would be a massive category. Hopefully that's what's happening, but we don't know. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting to see. And I think almost no matter what, there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand come this holiday. Clearly, there's going to be some categories which won't be as strong, but I think there's going to be a lot of money there. And what will be, I think, materially different this season, if you will, versus many, is whatever happens to the upfront over the long term. And I agree with a lot of what I've seen and written and spoken about, and some of the stuff that you've done with some of your interviews that say, the upfront's probably changed forever. But regardless of whether that's true, it's certainly different this year. And so that leaves a lot of more dollars in flux, as does the fact that there are just nowhere near as many live events, particularly sports, of course, that would have collected a lot of those dollars. And so it will be interesting to see how those two kind of campaign-like things, back to school and holiday, are different, specifically for the TV industry, because I think it opens the door for a lot of new advertisers. And I think that's going to not just impact TV, but the ecosystem at large, because there's going to be a lot of new spenders and a lot of new categories that have historically been crowded out that likely have room to play. Certainly, we weren't first to recognize that a world of data-driven marketing and media was on the horizon, and in fact coming, that personalization was becoming ever more important, and that to enable those types of things, you needed a firm grasp on understanding individuals and understanding the households with the various identity signals that are necessary to address the appropriate devices. In many cases, meaning not relying on a cookie ID, but relying on other identity signals, and that's something we've been invested in for a long time because we've seen this future coming. That pace of change is clearly accelerated. TV has often been a big marketer game, especially that linear television game, because it's a high dollar commitment and it's often a longer term commitment. As more dollars are kept to be spent at the moment of opportunity, whether you think of that as a scatter marketplace traditionally as the TV world would talk about it, or just more campaign-centered flighting versus upfront flighting, you leave room for the torso of clients that are not the big spenders, but are in many categories that, especially right now, can spend more money because it's great for their particular industry. So, for instance, e-learning, higher ed e-learning, I think is going to be a great category over the next little while. Subscription services of many flavors. The fitness category, both from home fitness as well as gyms that are figuring out digital content. These are all marketers that historically you wouldn't see very often in TV, if at all, right? And now there's space for them as big spenders are dark, and there's less money being spent on these big ticket upfront items right now. And so likely they're around more. And that, of course, includes a lot of DTC brands as well. So what's the connective tissue here is what? It's that these are the types of companies that have, by and large, been more data-driven in how they go to market and have been more digitally savvy. And those types of marketers are the ones that therefore expect their media partners or their ad tech partners or the combination of the two to do a better job allowing microsegmentation, to do a better job allowing frequency of optimizations, to do dynamic creative messaging, the types of stuff that really leads to higher marketing ROI. And this is really where the big social platforms and Google and Facebook and Amazon, really the big digital dominant players have won for all these years, not just with the head of the curve, but with the torso, with those middle marketers that might not be the 10, 20, $50 million spenders, but in aggregate make up a ton of money. And what we see happening is that as the entire ecosystem becomes more connected to this idea of personalization, people-based marketing, that the entire ecosystem needs more intelligence around audiences and identities to meet the expectations of this torso, which for many media companies is going to be a huge lifeblood for the next little while, if not for the long term. And so that's the trend we were investing in. And the good news, I suppose, for us, again, would not have asked for a pandemic to create this by any stretch of imagination, but certainly that speed of change is now going even faster.